Hello everyone, welcome to this video about playing on one chords or the one of a 2-5-1 in major. And I got this question asked under one of my other videos. And it's a good question. Indeed, there's a lot of attention on playing on 2-5-1s in general, but then especially about playing on the 5 chord, of course, because there's lots of different colors you can play on the 5 chords. And the one chord, usually the lick ends like on beat 1 of the one chord, and then what are you going to play on the one chord that is just as nice as the stuff you just played on the 5 chords. And the funny thing is, I actually have a lot of concepts for the one chord. In fact, I might have more concepts for the one chord than I have for the 5 chords. And this originated with one of the things that first kind of got the attention of the gypsy jazz community. As teaching materials, I put out a system called the Van Hemert system. Van Hemert is my last name. And that was kind of a thing I designed to teach myself how to play gypsy jazz guitar or jazz guitar. You know, people make kind of a big difference, but apart from some little changes in harmonic concepts, it's pretty similar to jazz guitar. So to teach myself how to play jazz guitar, I designed this system which would enable me to skip all the regular stuff like learning scales and modes and just go directly to playing nice lines, which is what my goal was. I wanted to play great sounding lines during improvisation. So I designed this system which primarily consists of those loops. The loops of my last video, I was talking about loops to play on dominant chords. Now I have many of those loops for major chords. So the loops I'm going to show you for the one chord, for the major chords, come directly from that system. So if you ever have the chance to go to one of my workshops, and I give those workshops worldwide, different times of the year, you'll probably get a lot of handouts with all these loops. So I selected a couple of loops for all of you, and I tried to have very different kind of sounding loops. So as usual, when I design these loops, I try to design them on several places of the guitar so that you have the complete range of the neck and it's easy to transpose things. So for each position, and I'm going to do the loops in 3 positions, from the root, from the 3rd, and from the 5th of G major. I took loops that are based around the major 7 arpeggio, and that is a sound that is typically used in gypsy jazz, mainly in the Dutch style of gypsy jazz. If Stochelo or Moses Rosenberg or Paulus Schaefer or me, I'm also part of the Dutch style of gypsy jazz. If we're playing on the one chord, we tend to use a lot of major 7 arpeggios. That is something that happens in bebop too, so it's not completely a different thing. And I started doing that when I was learning a jazz guitar, and it sounds great, and I'm going to show you those loops. But then I always heard those guitar players play those really cool bluesy things. And I already knew kind of the bluesy stuff on violin, but that bluesy stuff comes from Grappelli, and that doesn't really sound on guitar. It's a different concept. So I started looking into people like George Benson and Joe Pass and other guitar players that have bluesy, Wes Montgomery. But then I discovered this guitar player called Ulf Arcadius. And he did all the work for me. He transcribed Joe Pass, George Benson, Wes Montgomery, and he extracted all the bluesy stuff from them and made it his own thing. And he's able to play really tasteful, virtuosic, sensitive blues on almost anything, and especially on one chords. So all the bluesy stuff I'm going to show you basically comes from him, but realize that he also got it from great masters before him. Okay, let's start with the loops. So I'm first gonna play them slow, explain them a little bit, and then at the end of the video, I'm gonna play all the loops with the backing so that you can practice with me on sound slice like usual, and the sound slice integration link is under the video. Okay, and before we start with the loops, as always, if you like these videos, give it a like, and please subscribe. That really helps me out. And if you feel like you want to do more, check out my Patreon page. It is linked under the video. Okay, let's start with the first loop. It is based around the root of G. And again, so I go up and down or down and up, but you know, it's like a loop. It loops back onto itself. Okay, so it sounds like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. Time. 1, 2, 3, 4. So the triplet is picked when it is slow. It's kind of weird, but I always pick 2 slurred, one up, like that. Okay, so now realize that these loops are not meant to play it exactly like this, right? You have to alter the rhythms, repeat stuff, leave stuff out, start at another note. When you look at what I was doing in the beginning, I was trying to improvise with these loops, although I think I played other stuff as well. But I never played these loops exactly as written. I start them at different places in the bar, and I alter them to make them my own and to make them fit the moment or the progression I'm playing on. Of course, I was only playing on G, but still. Yeah, there's not much to say. This shape I got from Birelli. I saw him play that, and then later I discovered that that Lagerlund plays exactly the same shape, but he uses different fingerings. So I have to do it high then. So this would be the Birelli shape. It's the same, and then Lagerlund plays. It's the same notes, right? But so I know both shapes, but you know, just stick with, and it sounds actually exactly the same as. But if you ever see Lagerlund play on major chords, then you might recognize the same notes as this loop I just showed you. And then the end of the loop, or this part, that comes from Stochelo. It's from his famous. But then an octave lower. And then this thing, I don't know where I got it, but this is a kind of a standard shape for major 7, right? So it's based around that. Okay, let's go to the second loop. It's based around the third. And, oh wait. Of course, this was only one loop. Now let's go to the bluesy loop. So, right, this was the major 7 loop. Now let's go to the bluesy one. And that goes like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. For great sounding lines, and the things you have to pay attention to is, of course, the slides. I always try to slide from one fret below where I have to end up. So in this case, I've slide from the third and the second fret to the fourth and the third fret. And then the last part, same thing, I slide from one fret, not picking. again, you could play little parts of this, you know, change it, but this is a great bluesy loop. So you got a major 7 loop and a bluesy loop from position 1. I call this position 1 because it's on the root. So position 2 is the next one. It's from the third. It's not called position 3 because then I wouldn't have position 2. So position 2 is from the third, and the major 7 loop goes like this: 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. 2, 3, 4, 1. So the nice thing, of course, is this thing. I don't know where I heard that. Maybe it's a thing it's typical, kind of a bebop jazz guitar thing too. Of course, it comes from a saxophone Charlie Parker lick, but in guitar it's extra nice because you can do everything with hammer-ons and pull-offs, and it's a nice little color. And then the end is a standard Stochler-Rosenberg major lick, and almost everybody that plays Dutch style gypsy jazz plays that phrase. It's a very swinging and easy to play phrase on the guitar because of the very convenient fingerings. So again, the whole thing a little bit faster. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Okay, that was the lick based around the major 7 arpeggio, right? The major 7 arpeggio is right there. And now the one based on bluesy licks, and I think this is completely Uwe Kenius phrase, and it goes like this: 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Pure gold, this line, this phrase. It's really great. In the beginning, it's all based around, actually it's based around a G major triad, you know, but that's why I don't like to talk too much about theory, because I could say, you know, you could play blues based around a major triad, but if you don't know this exact phrase or these licks, it's never gonna sound as good as if I just show you how Uwe Kenius does it. And I'm sure he got this from George Benson. Sounds very George Benson-like. I know that this fingering, you know, I came up with this fingering myself because I was transcribing Uwe Kenius from a couple of albums he made with the Ray Brown Trio. And this seems convenient to me because I always try to see if I can find fingerings that stay in position, because that means that I can play it in more keys. But because if I use many frets, then at one point I will run out of neck. So when I transcribed it myself, I came up with this. But when I saw the video, he actually plays. Something like this, you know, and it's many more frets, and it sounds great too. But my way, you could play it in more keys, because then you could also play it, in, you know, in E flat. Otherwise, if you use Uwe Kenius' way, you have to play it up high, you know. Okay, so let's play it again, or walk through it again to the next part. Oh yeah, the typical Kenius stuff. So this first double stop, you kind of have to bend it at the end of the note. It's not in the tap because it's not really bent. It's more of a little flourish. I think it's a typical thing to do for real blues players, you know, like B.B. King or other blues players. I can't think of any other names now. And And then the second double stop is just with a slide. Okay, let's play the whole line. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Really cool, you know. If you play this, and the thing is, if you play lines like this, everybody who knows the history of jazz guitar will smile when you do this, because they recognize that this is a big part of jazz guitar tradition, playing these kind of bluesy phrases. And I don't call them blues licks per se, because when I think of blues licks, I think of the stuff that the real blues guitar player would play. And these are more bluesy licks, you know, stuff that a jazz guitar player would play to create a blues feeling, which is not the same thing. For instance, I don't know any of the real blues licks, because if I would want to learn that, I would have to transcribe that, and I've never transcribed that. So I only know the bluesy stuff, the bluesy stuff you play in jazz. Okay, let's go to the two final loops, the third combination. First, again, the major 7 loop starts. So we're now playing around the 5th of G. Goes like this: 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. One, 2, 3, 4, 1. A lot of stuff in this one. So this thing, beginning, it's just a major 7 arpeggio, and you can play with that, right? You could play. You could play them up and down, or start high. Many options, and you got to discover that stuff for yourself. But just as a basis in this phrase, and now we're here and we play this thing. That is a great lick in itself. You can play it as triplets too. I mean, there's a lot of stuff here that you can play on major chords. And then this little scale up. Now, and there's a good reason not to really study major scales, because this is not a really major scale. There's an extra note in there, so that you end up nicely on the beat. So that's why I think it's much better to study phrases that incorporate the major scale, so you see actual music or musical applications of the major scale. So this is one going up, and then I put one going down after it. This one. I always want to call this the Dutch fingering for a descending major scale starting on the high E string, because this is the fingering that I see Stochelo use and Moses. I don't know if Paulus uses it, but it's a great fingering with a couple of slides from the C to the B, from the G to the F sharp, and from the C to the B again. So another tip, if you want to make slides, something that I have to remind myself, make sure you really, it's almost a kind of a robotic slide. Like, you want to hear two distinct notes, especially when you play a scalar pattern like this. If you do it kind of sloppy, or the pressure goes, you let go of the string too much, then it sounds like you are playing sloppy. So you don't want to do that. Okay, so the whole phrase again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Oh, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Okay, and then the bluesy loop. So it's funny because the bluesy loop here, I don't know if I took this from Uwe Canis. I think there's parts of Moses Rosenberg in here, but I'm pretty sure he took it from George Benson. That is kind of the source. You know, George Benson, Joe Pass, and Wes Montgomery are the source of all these bluesy stuff. But it goes like this: 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Okay, so let's start with the ending. I think I took this from Martijn van Ittersen, but it's a typical, I guess it's Wes Montgomery, or maybe even Joe Pass, or George Benson. You know, yeah, probably it's all three of them. But kind of like this ringing pedal note. We call that like pedal if there's a note repeating. So this G, you can play that. You don't have to play it exactly like it's a tap. You just have to play that G a couple of times. And then the last note, you could either stay on the B flat, or you could, like it says in the tab. Just experiment a little bit with that sound, right? I gave you a suggestion to play this rhythm that's in the tab. It's really bluesy, but you could experiment with playing phrases, especially going on the B string from the D flat to the C. That sound with a G on top. And the funny thing is, you could play the same kind of things with the E on top. Also in G. So if you want to have this effect in G, you could either have the root on top or the 6 on top. So the G, the 6 is an E. And you can kind of mirror the same. Okay, that's the ending. And then the beginning. I mean, this is not really bluesy notes, but if you use these slides, it sounds, I call it kind of lyrical blues, you know, where you slide to the major 7. And to the 5th here, but especially the major 7. And the next phrase really, you know, it's like sliding to the major 7 and the 9. Okay, so now what is left is for you to experiment with all these phrases. Just put on a backing track with only G. You know, I always use a looper pedal for that. And then just play these phrases to taste. You know, play with them. First, maybe play them exactly as in the tab, but then you gotta break free of that and start experimenting with altering them. And then on songs, let's say you're playing Hungarian, you know, it starts with G, A flat. Then, you know, you could play a bluesy phrase on G and then play the major 7 loop on A flat. Maybe like 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Stuff like that, you know. Let's try something else. Let's do a bluesy phrase on A flat and a loop and the major 7 loop on G. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. You could fit these blues phrases in many places, and you could even start early, start playing them on the 5 chord. But these are things you just got to experiment with and get that sound. First, get that sound in your head of the blues, of those bluesy lines, and also of the major 7. Get them in your head so that you can sing them. And I don't mean literally sing them, but you can you'll hear them in your head, and you could sing them if you want to, especially the rhythms. And then once you start hearing them that way, and then you get that by playing them a lot and by recording yourself and listening to it, then and listening to George Benson and Joe Pass and Wes Montgomery and Ulva Kenius. And if you get that sound in your ears, you start playing it, and you'll be surprised. You'll be surprising yourself at how easy it eventually is. So what's left is for me to play all these phrases with a backing track, so you can practice with me on Soundslice. So let's do that. Okay, so here we go. I'm gonna play every loop once. I used to play it like 3 times, but there's no point. You can loop it on Soundslice. There's another reason for you to go to Soundslice. And I'll be playing both loops in a row. So I'll first play the major 7 loop, the first one, and then I'll play the bluesy loop. So here we go. Right, loop number 2. First the major 7 and then the blues one. Okay, and the last 2 loops. Here we go. That was it for these great lines for the 1 chord. And again, I want to encourage you to go out and find your own lines, the lines that you really love on recordings, and transcribe them. You'll see it's not that hard. Just go note by note. And if you do that and take your time, you will eventually get it. Okay, I see you all next time. Bye.